today I am delighted to welcome Emma Cooper to the Building New Realities podcast. Hi, Emma.
Hi, Tim.
Great, thanks for joining me here. So Emma is in charge of BD, Business Development at Cooperative Innovations. And Cooperative, I'm really interested to find out more about Cooperative because I've sort of seen them from a distance and played some of your games and tried some of your experiences.
Cool.
Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
Cool.
Cooperative Innovations is, we've just had a birthday. We think we're 6 years old. Apparently it's complicated. I'm not going to dig into it, but the business is 5 to 6 years old. We're an immersive technology studio. We're specialists in Unreal Engine. And we're particularly interested in how the immersive sector can engage people in a social way. So a lot of our games and experiences are collaborative and social. So Space Team VR was published during the pandemic, during 2020, and that is a collaborative shouting game. You're on board a spaceship which is a little bit broken, and as a group of people, you need to work together to try and navigate.
We've played Space Team a lot at work, so yeah, we know how it goes.
It's a lot of fun. It's incredibly chaotic, and we feel like it was kind of like the perfect vehicle for social VR. So we're still working on that. We're working on a version so that I call it flatties, but 2D screens can join in the fun. So we're going to be making a new version. We're bringing that to beta test very soon. And also we're working on a version for PlayStation VR. So we're out on Oculus and PC VR currently, and it will be available for Sony PlayStation VR and flat screens shortly.
Flatties coming soon.
Flatties coming soon, yeah. One of the things we really want to do is be as inclusive as possible. We think that one of the things that will help bring people over to the side of VR and immersive is by engaging them in the places where they are already. So engaging PC gamers in a game that they could play either on their flat screen or in VR, and see if we can tempt them over to the dark side.
Space Teams is a lot of fun. You know, it's just for people who haven't played it. There's 4 of you in as Emma's described, a kind of breaking down spaceship, and you've got to basically instruct each other or shout commands, and the other person's got to react, and it just gets really, really chaotic and really shouty. It's a good Friday evening, mid drinks kind of game.
Yeah, not too silly.
Yeah.
Don't drink and VR, people. Yeah, and then the other project we've been working on and is my baby at the moment. So I'm project lead for Curators. Curators is a social virtual tour platform for museums and heritage sector. We've just launched Museum of Plastic, which is an imagined museum. We've created the content ourselves as part of the British Council's creative commissions that went along with COP26. So the idea of the museum is it's set 100 years in the future in a world where we've resolved our relationship with plastic, and the museum tells the story of how we got from where we are now to a much better position in the future. So we're busy launching that and talking to people about that in hopes that we can start to develop the platform and get more content onto it, and start to engage more museums around what they can do in the immersive space and how we can use social digital spaces to really bring their digital collections to life.
Yeah, I had to go around the Museum of Plastic, and I think because the way it's set 100 years in the future and it talks about having resolved some of those issues, it's actually quite uplifting, right? Because there's a lot of like,
good.
hey, this has been sorted, and then these kind of interesting stories that you put together around it. And, you know, I love the sort of the, you know, almost like the igloo feel, very reminiscent of, you know, going round, you know, real exhibitions, you know, whether it's Egyptology. But yeah, I really recommend people try the Museum of Plastic. It was, you know, because you play with scale. There's these nice stories set in the future. Like I say, I think the feeling I came away with it was sort of quite uplifting.
Yeah, I think that's what we were hoping for. A lot of the conversation around climate crisis is like heavily doom laden, like in an attempt to kick people up the bum a little bit around their behaviour. And one of the things I'm really interested in is behaviour change and how we get people to be better at just basically being humans. And I know from long-lived experience that the best way to encourage people to change is to give them an active instruction, to give them something positive to work towards. If you tell somebody to stop doing something or that they're being naughty or bad, it really doesn't work as a motivator to get people to do things. So when Leo Mercer, who we've been working with as the creative producer on the project, when he came up with the idea, we loved it because it's so much more about what we're interested in as a company, which is, you know, positive change for the future rather than you were doing this wrong. Please stop doing this thing.
Well, yeah. I mean, the name of the podcast is Building New Realities, and typically we go off in a kind of tech direction, but actually a lot of what you said in just the way of inspiring people and reporting the news. You know, we don't want to go off down the news wormhole, but obviously, you know, it's reported in a particular way, and there isn't enough positive news or encouragement. It feels like you're swimming against a very constant tide of heavy, oppressive, sort of fear-inducing news and information. And is that helping us build a good reality? No.
It's like it's really hard to know what to do for the best. So we invested a huge amount of time. We talked to scientists and experts. So we worked in collaboration with Hull University, who have a specialist unit interested in the circular economy. And they introduced us to a lot of scientists who are working around the globe on this particular subject. And we said, so if we mark our cards and say 100 years from now everything's going to be solved, what actually needs to happen in the next 100 years for us to get to that point? And we had long, really interesting discussions with them. And it falls into 2 or 3 things that need to happen. One is individuals need to take responsibility for their own actions. And the other side is, as with industry and governance, we need to be moving into a circular economy. We need to get to a point where we're not making this stuff anymore. We're just reusing, repairing the stuff that's already been made. And then also a shift from linear economics into doughnut economics. So, like, as a package, that is effectively the story we tell. We invent some individuals and also some things that happen in the future, and we tell the story along those lines. And it's really uplifting. I'm glad that you got that from it, because the first thing that happens is we kill the penguins.
Yeah.
Which the developers found really quite heartbreaking. The team were like, we do what?
They're gone.
They're gone.
We need a strong opening.
The penguins are gone, but as it happens, that becomes the straw that breaks the camel's back and motivates everybody to really live up to their best selves. So yeah.
So I'm interested. I don't know much about the circular economy, so I'd love to hear more about what that means, and I'd like to hear about the sort of the research or views that you got from a whole university?
The university were really super helpful in helping us reframe the project. When we initially started it, we were talking in terms of, in 100 years we've got rid of plastic, and they really helped us to reframe that, because that's kind of nonsensical. Plastics exist beyond what we commonly refer to as plastics, which are oil-based plastics. Actually, there are many plastics in nature, and there's a lot of work being done in terms of bioplastics at the moment. So they really helped us to reframe what the project was and what that future point would be. So instead of us saying that we've completely eradicated plastics in 100 years, actually what we're saying is no new plastics are being made. Plastics are still in the wild. It's just that they're being reused and reclaimed. And at the moment, one of the issues that we have with many plastics is the term single use. So many plastics that are designed to be used repetitively are not being used for their full potential lifestyle. We are just chucking them away. So that's the one of the most useful things that we can do as individuals, is to reuse stuff that is designed to be used more than once. And then the other things around plastics that are marked as biodegradable currently in the market, and how tricky those plastics are, and the complexity that comes with talking about those plastics. Those plastics tend to not actually be what we would consider, as laypen people would consider, biodegradable. You can't usually put those plastics in your compost. They need to be put into they need to be taken to a special factory or facility in order for them to be broken down and reused. And so there's huge amounts of education that we tried to reformat into this project. In terms of the circular economy, I feel like I can't represent, because it's not my specialty.
Oh, the donut economy then. Tell me about the donut economy.
Donut economy is great. So at the moment we live in linear economics. Growth is good, growth is everything. The only way that you can demonstrate success as a business is by growing, by increasing your profit or increasing the scale of what you're doing. In donut economics, it's about thinking about maintaining a balance in the middle of the donut. So if you think of a traditional ring donut, with donut economics, the ideal is to be in the center. Where the glaze is, just on the top,
above the jam,
the perfect place.
Just above the jam, or has this got to be a ring donut?
a ring donut that's glazed in the center of that ring. Inside that ring is people dropping off. So people who are not earning enough money, people who are not they're unable to exist in the economy because they're too poor, they're unable to get a job, they're homeless, etc., etc. On the outside of the donut is excess, is too much. It's the growth for growth's sake. It's people being multi-billionaires. It's unsustainable.
Deciding they need to go into space for that weekend's jolly.
Yes. Whereas with donut economics, the aim is the way you win the game in donut economics is to stay in the fine balance between those two things. So making sure everybody is on board and everybody's safe, and all of their needs are being met, and not exceeding that, not living beyond our means, not using the planet's resources beyond what is entirely reasonable for one human being. And it's about balance rather than about a growth trajectory.
Up and to the right.
it's really interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the first time we've ever had a little sojourn into different economics. So thank you for that.
I'd like to add, I'm not an expert in this. This is something that I'm like, it's like pop psychology. It's like
I've read a bit.
That's a very thin interpretation.
Yeah. You mentioned social activities, and my assumption there is you mean social in terms of multiple people getting together. Yes. But obviously, some of the work you're also doing, well, Museum of Plastic does have a social element to it in terms of the tension it's trying to raise. So at Cooperative Innovations, do you feel you're kind of more focused on enterprise? You more focused on entertainment? What's the sort of, if you could put your, nail your colours to a mast, which sort of direction do you think you're most interested in?
We're most interested in entertainment. I think entertainment with a nod towards social betterment. I think that's the thing, is the technology that we have at the moment, and we're continuing to push the state of the art of, has lots of opportunities to make things better for people. With immersive technologies, especially with social immersive technologies, it completely reduces the need to travel, which means that we're getting to start to talk about reducing carbon footprint to a certain extent. So with Curators, it's the ability to go to a dream location and have a really positive, lovely experience, but not pay the actual cost of the airfare, and then the environmental cost of the airfare. So like, it's answering those needs. We also recognise that we can add levels of accessibility to certain places. So in a lot of heritage environments, the physical building is the artifact, and they can't add stair lifts, they can't add ramps. So being able to give somebody the ability to see things that they would never be able to see because they have accessibility issues is really interesting to us. And like the furthest end of what we're trying to achieve is making this as accessible as possible to content makers. So who are the voices that are telling the stories that are being told in the museum and heritage sector, and can we broaden that out? If we're able to make tools that lots of people can use, regardless of their expertise or status, what kinds of stories are we going to surface? So a long-term plan for Curators is to create a tool for everybody to be able to make their own museum or tour, which is super exciting. So I think maybe we are pinning our flag towards social change, but using entertainment as a vehicle to do that.
And how did Curators come about? Was it as a result of a project, a pilot, a grant, or was it just an internal kind of mission?
It's an internal mission. We've had the bare bones, like a prototype of the platform for a really long time, and we've been talking to people about it for a really long time, but from a very broad perspective. So we internally called the project storytelling for a really long time, and we can see that it would work in lots of different sectors. We've been talking to television entertainment companies. We think it's got a lot of use in training and education. But at the beginning of the pandemic, Innovate UK put out a funding call for creative business responses to COVID, and specifically for sectors affected by a lockdown. So we got our brainstorming hats on, and we started thinking about, I at the time was homeschooling, as were a couple of my colleagues. We were thinking a lot about like what what we were missing. And one of the things I really missed with museums, like we spend a lot of time in museums because it's free. It's free entertainment, and it's nourishing entertainment. So as I'm one of those mums, like I love museums. So we kind of molded what was storytelling into Curators, got a grant from Innovate, spent a decent amount of time doing some R&D, and then from that we're now at a position where we've got the beta online, and people are giving us feedback, which is a wonderful position to be in. So yeah, that's kind of how we got to where we are.
Yeah, it's interesting, the museum experience. It just, whilst we're sort of fighting or wanting to provide experiences for our children that are other than the screen-based, and, museum's great for that, isn't it? Because it triggers conversations and imagination and all those good things.
Yeah, I think they work on multiple levels depending on age group. So a very young age group is just going to a place where there's cool stuff to look at, giant skeletons and interesting treasure. Whereas as kids get older and they as self-learning, self-motivated, they can read, they can explore stuff, and being able to offer like a depth of storytelling is really awesome.
All right, we've managed to do 25 minutes without mentioning the M word. So I'm now going to ask you, what does the metaverse mean to you?
We started really tentatively it was approximately 2 weeks before that word started getting loads of press. We started tentatively saying, oh, have we made a metaverse for museums and culture sector? Like, it feels like that's what this could be. So it was really interesting, like seeing that word just like
explode. Yeah.
I think what the metaverse means to me is I've spent 20 years working in interactive media, and the metaverse to me is the digital layer that exists all around us and has done since we invented the internet. So it's metadata that's attached to stuff that exists all around us, and we have different lenses that we can see that through. So whether that's my beautiful phone, or it's not there, or my headset, or my laptop, or the television. The metaverse has existed already for a really long time. And ownership of that is a tricky thing, because I don't think it was ever a commodity. I don't think it ever will be.
What do you think's driven the all the sort of attention to it in the last 2 or 3 months? Because it was getting lots of attention prior to the Facebook rebrand, so I don't think we can pin it all on that.
No, I think you know how ideas coalesce. You know how
lots of people are thinking the same thing at the same time. Yeah, synchronistic.
There's a bit of synchronicity, and I think that as a sector, we've really struggled with defining. Like, my mum still doesn't really know what I do for a job. I'm not sure I know, actually, but I think we've struggled with defining who we are and where we fit alongside other industries. Often we're tagged on as the end and considered marketing, or are we an industry in and of ourselves? Are we, which is what I believe, a layer that sits on top of all things? It's just something that is an addition to supplementary information to all things. And I think that the pandemic has changed people's understanding and working knowledge of what digital spaces are. I work really hard to try to not say the real world, and we'll talk about the physical world versus the digital world. I've had friends that I've made online that are lifelong friends, that I meet very rarely in the physical world, but they're no less meaningful as relationships. They're deep, important relationships to me, and I think for a lot of people, like a vast majority of people, digital relationships have always seemed a bit empty and a bit silly and a bit hollow. And what we had to endure during the pandemic was maintaining what were considered actual relationships with people in digital spaces. And everybody just went, oh, I see. So then the conversation has, I think that broadening out of understanding of what digital space is and how we can share it and navigate it as a social being, we've then got to the point where we go, well, what do we call it? And I think as a sector, we just gone digital space, yada, yada, yada. Whereas now we're bringing in a wider group of people into this conversation. They've gone, oh, this is the metaverse. And we've gone, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's us.
You've given us a name. We're going to take it.
Quick, go for it. Grab it.
And that's entirely what's happened, which is why, like, a lot of people rolled their eyes when Facebook did what they did, but it's not surprising.
Yeah, also not a bad thing necessarily.
It's not a bad thing. It makes it a little complex.
Legitimizes it in some way. I mean, if they start trying to own the name, that becomes difficult, because the name has established headway and meaning on its own, and then coming in and swiping it would be, which obviously could entirely happen. But I think, generally that kind of signaling that it's a sector is useful to us. And I really like what you said about, because I haven't really thought about it in those terms, because you just kind of get on with it when you're doing a business, but to actually think about where you sit, and perhaps we just metamorphizing or doing that thing that butterflies do when they come out of cocoon, where you've been like a bit of digital and you've been a bit of marketing and a bit of advertising, and we're actually just trying to sort of come forth into sort of our bit. And if metaverse is a name that people understand, because prior to that you might have said, I work in graphics, or I work in computers, or if you were just doing marketing stuff the whole time and your head was a marketing person, you go, I do marketing, but with immersive. So perhaps it is just a nice emergence of a catch-all phrase. I think when there's such hype around you, there can be a little bit of, trying to almost like mental catch-up the whole time, and things, and something you've been working in is sort of moving that fast, and you sense it sort of, or where's it running to now? Is it now turning into something else? And when you've always sort of worked on the cutting edge, it can be a bit of a curse to always try and keep moving forward. It's like, no, just stay where you are. And you're like, just do this bit, rather than be like, great, now I'm going to do an NFT enabled Web3 avatar fashion label. It's like, whoa, no.
I think it's, I don't know if it's my age, or somebody was saying that to me yesterday, that the pandemic has aged everybody like 10 years.
Physically or emotionally?
Both.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's that, or if it is actually my age, because I have been in the sector for 20 years. It's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And I think to some extent it's, if you pardon my language, same shit, different syntax.
Yeah.
And just give it a name. And I think what's important for us to understand is that this is other people navigating and understanding what we know in our bones, and possibly never really explained to people properly. And I think that's what's happening, is we were a niche, and people are now accepting, and we're growing and integrating into the rest of society, and we're going to have to share it. This is the thing, like, this is that's a good point as well. It might have been like, oh no, we just work in this little thing where it, just when you look at your comms and your feeds, it's all people in the sector and stuff, and you know what's going on in everyone else's companies, but it's all moving so quickly. But it has been quite a niche, and I think that's a good observation, is perhaps just sharing the niche, and I'd be happy to go, okay, great, everyone, come and have a play. And I think it's that thing of finding sustainability, finding that balance, so that we can, earn good incomes, not excessive incomes, but good incomes.
Donut incomes.
Earn the money that we deserve for the work that we do, but also welcoming others, make space for other people with different viewpoints. I think it's so vital to how we get better. I sound like a mentalist.
No, you're still making sense.
So yeah, I think it's a really interesting time for us. I don't know about yourself, but since the early lockdown, we have had different conversations with clients and partners, because they're like, we understand now what the need is. Like, we've almost, I think a lot of the time technologists are a little bit guilty of coming up with a solution that doesn't have a problem. But actually, we always knew that there was a problem. It's just that nobody else really recognised it.
Well, they didn't have a problem. We always saw that this could be a problem, and then obviously a pandemic has accelerated things.
So it's been really good for that, if nothing else. But it has been hard.
Yeah, it has been aging. And continues to be. Can you tell me about a project that changed your approach to your field?
Possibly this one, possibly the museum of plastic. I think I worked a very long time ago. In the olden days, I used to be a Flash developer. In the olden days, I worked on a project where we worked with a charity to make a game to talk to their audience about their subject matter. So they were a youth charity focused on talking to young people about the risks and the causes of youth homelessness. Youth homelessness doesn't technically exist in the UK, because if you're under 18, you are owned by the social network. We have to look after our children. However, many people understand that actually lots of children are homeless. So we made a game that was about behaviour change, and trying to convince children and young people that certain risky behaviours were going to lead to
have consequences.
Yes, exactly. Potentially dire consequences. And what I learned during that project was, you can set out with the best of intentions, but you don't always end up with the result that you wanted. And actually, the game was funnest when you played it badly. So when you took all
the wrong decisions, yeah.
When you, because if you did the right thing, you just got a sticker. You were like, yay! Whereas all the story and all the depth and all the interestingness in it were in if you did the wrong thing. So I think I learned a lot during that project, because like after it and looking at it and judging people's responses, it was like, yeah, we got this. We got this the wrong way around.
This is not the result I was looking for. Yeah, that's a very, very good observation. I mean, that's kind of part of the issue with news, like we were talking about when we started. It's difficult to make or to communicate positive outcomes other than you will feel well and balanced, or you will have a small voice of happiness in your body, as opposed to chaos, doom, reaction.
We've been trained on the adrenaline of doom. Like, I think we're all like been on guard now since, it feels like since about 2016. Like we've all been like, or possibly earlier, like 2011, like 2001. Like the point at which that kind of like doom news cycle really sucked us in. I saw a really interesting talk by, and I'm rubbish at names, I can't remember the name of the man, but the guy who did the future world building for Minority Report. And he was talking about the process that they went through to do that, like, near future casting. And he was commenting about, like, how he'd been praised for predicting the future and how hilarious he thought that was, because all he was doing was just taking things through their natural course and kind of like seeing where technology was going and going. So, like, in a couple of years, we could realistically see touchless, like, interaction with computers, because one of the like massive problems that we have with computers is the interface that we have with them is really bizarre. Like a keyboard and a mouse conceptually are really strange. So being able to shift that into touching space, he felt like was a natural future position to take. And I've been thinking about that a lot recently, is that, like, our natural future positions, if we're being told all of this negativity, is going to be dystopia. Like, it's going to be, and we're going to continue that cycle. So being able to put something out in the world that has some positivity and a direction of travel as well, you know, a suggested direction of travel. If we all do this, then what will happen?
More positive news is required. And what are you curious about right now?
I'm curious about, well, I'm always curious about what's next. I'm always very curious about what the next syntax is. Me and my husband talk often about the frustrations we have with our parents and their understanding of technology, and the fact that our children in approximately 15 to 20 years are going to be having conversations with each other about how mum and dad won't understand this thing. And we're trying really hard to think about what that thing is going to be. Like, what is it that we're just not going to get? Are we going to be the generation that kind of rides that wave? Are we going to be able to absorb and understand new technologies better than our parents did? Not to diminish my mum or my dad, but as they're both, you know, he's an engineer and she's like a physics teacher. They're both incredibly competent people, but for some reason Skype bewilders them. So I'm curious about what technology could bewilder me.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. And it may not be the input. Like, we might always get the technology, but it might be what you're expected to do with it. Like, if you have to check in, like, say, the way you check in for an airport, and you're like, no, now you've got to do some kind of TikTok dance as part of the checking in proceeding. It's like, well, why would I? I understand how to do it, but I'm just not going to do that. And our kids would be like, well, why not? Why would just do the TikTok dance to check in? It's your ID. It's like, no, you know, we would just have a real kind of. So in some ways, I think it's the way stuff's being adapted culturally that could catch us out. Where we're like, what the hell are you doing?
Although I am 100% behind a future where I have to dance to get on board. I'd like to vote for that.
Upvote.
Yeah, upvote. One upvote. I think that's. I think I'm a little bit scared of being relevant.
Yeah, well, we all are, aren't we?
Yeah.
Especially if you've come from a space where you're kind of ahead of the curve and you got your finger in the pulse, and that's kind of how you defined yourself. Then to not be that is going to be uncomfortable. So I have to prepare for that reality. We'll have to build a new reality. All right, wrapping up now, I'm going to ask if you could have a billboard with anything on it to help people build a new reality. It's like a physical billboard out in your town with an instruction, a couple of words. What would you suggest people do? Could be wash your hands. Could be have more sleep.
Oh my God, sleep is so important. I prepared for this So I knew this question was coming, and it's the only question that I knew was coming, and I prepared for this. And again, I'm going to swear. Oh no, I'm not going to swear. A long time ago, I made an embroidered patch to go on the back of my jacket, and it says "Everybody poos." And I think that's what I would say to the world, is that thing of we are
all the same.
Ostensibly all the same. We are meat sacks. We are incredibly fragile. Like our bodies cannot withstand a virus.
Yeah.
Like, and that's so much more important than a lot of the importance that we kind of really
attached
on
to that other stuff.
Pre-pandemic. And I think it's that thing of we put people on pedestals, we become myopic about comparing ourselves to other people, and it's just really unhealthy. And I think recognizing that everybody has to sit on the toilet.
I like that. It's a great it's literally a great leveler.
It's really helpful, you know. And I think that it's a really good way of thinking about how you conduct yourself in the world, although that has nothing to do with immersive technology.
That's fine.
I think that's one good thing maybe about the metaverse, is we don't have to deal with poo.
Not in the metaverse, no. But maybe take screen breaks.
But that's going to take it down a one.
Anyway, next question. If you had £100 million to spend on a social program with no red tape, what would that be?
I'd just give it away. I think I'd probably give it to artists. I'd give it to artists, and I would say, have at it. You know, in £100 million, I'd give it away in smaller chunks. So effectively, an individual could, you
give it to 100 artists. Million quid to 100 artists.
Yeah.
Nice.
And just let them live their lives, and be no consequences. I think a lot of the world artists are too wrapped up in
commerciality,
or have to become wrapped up in commerciality. And actually, we need art for people to understand who they are as people, and who we are as an organism. You know, we're a social organism. So I give it to a load of artists.
Good choice. And do you have any favourite theories? Like, I really like Solomon's paradox, which basically says it's easier to give good advice to someone else than to give yourself good advice.
Gosh, I suffer from that.
It's a good one, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. That's blanked me. I think one of my very best friend uses the phrase "this too shall pass," and
say that again. That phrase.
This too shall pass.
And this too shall pass. Yeah.
And I think that it is a truism. I think
it's a mantra, isn't it?
Yeah, we get very locked into the now, or the potential futures, and actually, all of it will pass. You know, we're a blip on the face of the planet, really, and just trying to enjoy what we have.
Let the gratitude shine.
Move forward. Yeah, I'm not usually this perky.
Very good. Very joyful. And any book recommendations?
The Doughnut economics book. Cannot for the life of me remember the name of the woman that wrote it. And also, I really love sci-fi, and I've been reading Rosewater.
Tage Thompson. I haven't heard of that.
Yeah. So, and it's a trilogy, so I've just started the second one. It's a really it's really interesting. I can't say anything about it without reading it. But yeah, I fully recommend that.
Nice one. Well, thank you, Emma. It's been wonderful to have you on the podcast. I'm glad we managed to get into a couple of different aspects of what building new realities might be, rather than just going for the pure technology play. So thank you for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me.
And is there any way people can keep up with what you're doing or what's going on at Cooperative?
Cooperative Innovations are on Twitter and Facebook and all the usual places, as is Curators. Curators is on Twitter as Curators. I'm quite appalling on Twitter. I'm EM_Cooper. I go through phases of either over tweeting or under tweeting, but I tend to share a lot of work there. And yeah, you can find us quite easily, I think,
Oh, sure.
through Google.
Cool. Yeah. Lovely. Great to chat with you.
And you.
Thanks.